One Star Cowboys podcast, presented by Haymaker. Now here's your host, Kevin K.T. Turner.
All right, let's get it. Wait, that's not Jon and Saad. It's Mike Marshall, the machine from D Magazine.
What gave it away?
Because you look a little bit like Maxi Kleba and Zach Martin pushed together. That was the pre-show meeting. That's
I'll
what
take
it was
it.
about.
That's fine. That was the entire pre-show meeting, so I don't know what we're doing today, but
Yeah, but we got Kent Garrison back there as well.
great.
He made me an iPod.
Hey.
He made it for me. Thank you, Kent.
What?
So the One Star Cowboys podcast is going to be a little nuts this week. We're live right now at the Haymaker Network studios in Frisco. We got a lot of Cowboys news to get to. I've been doing shows with Kent and Jon and Saad for like a decade. Just so the audience knows, I've been doing shows with Machine for about 2 decades.
Yeah,
That's for a long time.
Yeah. We're old.
We're old. But, dude, look, we got a big budget here. And we rolled out first-class seats for Jon and Saad. Let's go combine harvesting, boys. Yeehaw! Live from Indianapolis in a hotel room. Jon in one room. Saad in another room on the other side of the building. Hello, boys.
What's up? Doing good. It's cold over here. I'm jealous of the weather in Dallas, as always.
Jon, you're used to these blizzards. This is nothing for you, right?
No, that's why I moved to Dallas. I hate this weather. I mean, it's the only thing bad about this place. Everything else is great. Everything's walkable, tons of restaurants, easy to run into people. There's a lot going on at the convention center. It's not that far away. I mean, I want the Combine to stay in Indy, but yeah, the weather's not great. It's supposed to warm up to like in the 50s, though, so I'll take that.
All right, let's get things going. Let's just start this off. Jon, you get there. Stephen Jones is like, I'm ready to talk to the media. Some of your big takeaways from Stephen Jones's comments yesterday in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so he talked for probably about 27 minutes the other day, which is much longer than he ever does at the Combine, and so maybe he was just in a good mood. But, I mean, the biggest takeaways for me were really just the maybe this won't be a big deal to a lot of other people. I thought that Jadeveon Clowney would be a guy that they would definitely try and bring back. If you go back to what Steven said at the end of the season, he certainly was all about it. I think he even said absolutely he wants to bring him back, and now you can tell the tone has just completely changed, that's obviously because they have a new defensive coordinator in Christian Parker. And so I'd say that probably stood out the most. I know that a lot of people are hooked on the whole George Pickens thing. It doesn't do a lot for me because I just don't see him playing anywhere else in 2026. So I know he's one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name, in quote-unquote free agency. He's not going anywhere. Now, he might not be happy playing under the franchise tag, but Steven sounded very comfortable with him being under the tag this season. And I know that a lot of fans will be annoyed by that because that seems like business as usual. I know that George Pickens won't love that, but he seems very comfortable with the idea of George playing under the 1-year tag, which would be $28 million, and then see how that goes. And if they can't get to a long-term deal by July 15th, then that's what they do for this year and then reevaluate it next offseason. But that is some Cowboys as usual stuff that I know will annoy people, but it seems that they're comfortable with that. The other thing is Brandon Aubrey. They've discussed contracts. They've had some numbers back and forth, but the two sides seem like they're still pretty decent ways apart. And as a lot of people probably know, Brandon Aubrey is represented by Todd France, who represented Dak, and so they know how long those contracts have dragged out. So certainly there's a bigger deal when you're trying to work out your franchise quarterback than the kicker, who, he's the best kicker in the league, so you obviously want him, but I don't think that the Cowboys feel nearly as backed into a corner as they probably did with Dak. And also, Brandon Aubrey's a restricted free agent, so it's not like he can just leave in free agency. There'd be a tender on him. And so if he was to leave and someone was to give him, let's say, $8, $9, $10 million, the Cowboys would get a pretty high draft pick in return. So I'd say those are the biggest things. And then the other one is probably that the defense is the complete focus right now. A lot of the players on the defensive side of the ball are the ones talking right now at the Combine. Several of those top guys have talked about having formal interviews with the Cowboys. They only get like 40, 45 of those, so those are important. And some of those guys include Sonny Styles from Ohio State, Arvell Reese from Ohio State, the linebacker C.J. Allen from Georgia. So, I mean, all these top defensive guys that you've seen in mocks, they're talking to all of them out here. And so it'll be interesting to see as the week goes along and we talk to Jerry and we talk to Brian Schottenheimer how much impact that new defensive coordinator Christian Parker is having on him, because it sounds like he's going to have quite a bit.
Yeah, what about you, Saad? Same. Any other thoughts from Steven's comments or anything John had just said you want to bounce off of?
Yeah, no, I think the Pickens one is definitely something that's going to be polarizing, throughout the offseason. But John and I talked about this recently as well, where if you kind of are able to put away the whatever biases you have, and some of it justified about the Cowboys front office and things like that, you understand both sides of it. You understand the Cowboys wanting to see George Pickens on his best behavior for another year on the franchise tag. And because, yeah, he was a phenomenal receiver on the field last year, but let's not act like there was nothing that crept up. Maybe it wasn't Pittsburgh level because he had a franchise quarterback and all that stuff, but it wasn't a clean sheet. And honestly, even if it was a clean sheet, I still don't think there would have been anything wrong with giving it one more year. But also on the Pickens side of things, you understand why he would want a long-term deal. The bottom line is the leverage is in favor of Dallas when it comes to this situation. And if it does get really toxic and bad over the offseason, that's going to be just a product of the way that business is done. But I understand both sides of the argument there.
Do you have an order of operations you would prefer with George Pickens here, Machine?
I'm fine with the franchise tag, to be honest. Like, that's absolutely fine. We talked about it last week that giving a 4 or 5 year deal at his market's never going to be higher than this moment. And we are skipping past the negotiating part of this, in which you mentioned that's because he was a Dallas Cowboy and because he got to play with Dak Prescott. And if he stayed in Pittsburgh, I bet you're looking at most, I don't know, $60 million guaranteed on like a 4-year deal. So I don't know. I'm fine with 1 year is not enough for me to sign up for 4 more of George Pickens at $30 million. So it might get really, really contentious. And you just have to buckle up and be ready for that. And he's shown in the past that situations like that do end up getting a little contentious. It's not necessarily him going on a podcast like Micah would do. But you just start hearing rumblings, and sometimes that's worse.
Yeah.
I saw something the other day where Stephen A. Smith was talking about it. I'm sorry to bring that up on the show, but I thought it was interesting that he's talking about how if you put him under the tag, then there could be times in the season where George is kind of making business decisions, doesn't want to go after a ball because, he's not under. How would that help you next year in free agency? Like, I don't get how that helps you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It also it's going to happen. Like, we just like this is a long reputation here. This is what it is. It's going to be personal fouls. There's going to be sometimes where he's not going after the ball as hard as he could. Not in and out of his break the way he should. Still awesome. I'm not crapping on the guy. Let's clean up some news from earlier in the week. We'll start with you, John. Your thoughts on the Javonte Williams signing?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, you look at the deal, I think it's pretty fair for him. I think it's about $16 million is guaranteed. So, I mean, I look at it as, he'll be their back for the next 2 years if things go well. Maybe it's a third year. But I thought what he did last year was a great compliment to what they have in the passing game. And Clayton Adams loves him. Brian Schottenheimer loves him. And then, obviously, Javonte wanted to be there. He didn't want to go to free agency and try and do the highest bidder thing, which maybe it would have been advantageous, maybe it wouldn't. But it's just very clear he wanted to be in Dallas. He saw the opportunity there. I'm sure he enjoyed a lot of favorable boxes, as we have seen many years when Zeke was in his prime, that you didn't see that very often. Everyone was crowding the line of scrimmage to stop Zeke, and that was their offense. It's different now. And so he's just a good fit for what they're doing, and all parties seem to be on board with it. And it's kind of different because I just think of how many times I've come out here for the Combine, and there's very rarely a deal that gets done right before we come out here. And so when I saw it, I was kind of happy about it. I'm like, hey, it's one less thing for me to chase out here, so I'm fine with it. And they all seem to be on the same page and like it. And so it makes it kind of like covering the team like pretty clean, because it's like, could they add an offensive piece? Sure, it's possible, but it just seems like the entire focus is on fixing a defense that probably needs 6 to 8 quality players. So that's probably a good area to focus on.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I thought, my initial thought was 3 years seems like a long time, but I'm with John. Like, I don't really think that it necessarily has to go to that third year. I think it's more of like a 2-year deal type situation, but it's a good security blanket. They should not just, in my opinion, just stop at that and, not do anything else necessarily at running back. Now, if you feel like Phil Maffa, I don't know about Jaden Blue's stock, but if you feel like Phil Maffa or some other young cat is able to come in and develop behind Javonte Williams, that's fine, and that should be something they look at. But I thought, like, we're in a very actual win now window. Like, we've talked about this on this podcast throughout. What Jerry said about being all in 2 years ago was actually talking about 2026. Like, this is when the Cowboys are actually all in. When you have this point of Dak's contract, this point of Dak's career, this is where they can't really mess around too much in this area. So I thought it's a fine deal. I do think that Javonte Williams last year showed why you don't need Javonte Williams on a rich deal type contract, because you can find someone like that. But I also understand, like, it wasn't some outrageous deal, so I had no issues with it for them to do that. I don't think they need to stop at running back, but it's good to have that piece under contract.
Yeah, not having a second and third round pick and assuming that every single dollar needs to be dedicated to the defensive side, you kind of made this decision for yourself, right? I mean, you could go into this year and go like, hey, let's get Tyler Algier and another, mid-level running back and see if this room works out. But that's a gamble in itself.
Yeah.
That you can do this again, which, to be clear, a gamble I'm fine with. I'm fine gambling on the mid-level running backs until it burns you, which I don't know if it ever will, because all those dudes are playing year to year and they're so motivated to play well and they're all good and you have light boxes and all, the 25 different reasons why a cheap running back makes sense. Without a second or third round pick, you're going, okay, I'm going to miss day 2 of the draft, then I'll come back with fourth round and you're going to tell me offensive player? Yeah. I don't think that's happening, right? So you kind of set the table for yourself to be forced into finding out a long-term solution with Javonte.
And
and that's a great point. Real quick, KT, Machine. That's a great point about not having those mid-round or early round picks, because we saw this last year with Jaden Blue. When you have never invested in the running back position in the draft, you feel like a 5th round pick. We were treating that around here like it was a 2nd round pick, like Jaden Blue is going to be the answer to all their woes. In reality, you really want to get a starting level running back in the 2nd, 3rd round, a guy that you can plug and play. So the fact that they don't have that, that's another reason why, like, signing Javonte Smart. And also, real quick, on the Javonte side of things, I don't think there's any position where there's a bigger gamble to enter the free agency market than running back at Javonte Williams' level. Like, of course, if you're Saquon at his peak and you'll break the bank, but at Javonte's level, we saw that with Rico Dowdle last year. Rico Dowdle wanted to test the market, and the Cowboys moved on real quick from that, and we're like, fine, you can go get your $6 million somewhere else and be part of a committee. So it's a gamble for a running back to hit the market if you're not one of the top guys too.
I go back to what John said too, though, about it cleaning everything up. Like, I can imagine John was not looking forward to writing if Jeremiah Love gets to 12, we're going to take him. Or was that on your to-do list, John?
I mean, I would have been fine with it. I just, to get to that point, you'd have done a lot on defense in free agency or via trade for me to think that would even make any sense. I just look at their roster defensively, and there's just so much that needs to be fixed that while that sounds fun, and Steven likes to compare it to the CeeDee Lamb draft where they probably needed Chase on more than Lamb, they were way better on both sides of the ball than they are right now on defense. I mean, this is as bad as defense has been talent-wise in a long time. So while I think that would be fun for our show and that'd be fun to watch, I don't think that would be that smart for team building.
Okay, can we go back to the Brandon Aubrey thing for a minute? Because it is interesting. If some team is enamored by Brandon Aubrey, and let's say he's got the 2nd round tender on him, and they were to sign him, the Cowboys could match, but they were to say, hey, we'll give him $10 million a year. Isn't it smart business if you're the Cowboys to say, yeah, we'll go ahead and take that 2nd round pick and just move on? Like, I think Brandon Aubrey, we all know he's a weapon. I just think he might be a little bit overvalued by the cool, awesome things he can do.
I'm moving on at $10 million. I think if they want to make him the highest paid kicker, I don't know what the Butker number is right now, but let's say it's around 7, 8, somewhere in there. I can get down with that, but you start getting in the $10 million range. I just go and I look at kickers across the ball, like through the history of the game, and how long do they stay as the absolute best clear-cut kicker? And if you're going to pay him that, he has to stay that way for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons. And so it could happen, but I do think there's a lot of a gamble there. So I probably wouldn't be that interested at $10 million a year.
Yeah, I'd be a lot more inclined to give him a little bit of a longer term deal if you can bring the cap hit down and bring the overall number down. And if you can get out of it later, just, on paper, you give him a longer deal, but then you're able to get out of it at a reasonable time. I'd rather do that. But $10 million does seem like a lot for a kicker. And it also, you have to go by the situation. Like, I don't think the Cowboys are necessarily a kicker away. I think there are some teams that Brandon Aubrey at $10 million might be worth it. But for the Cowboys, I think a second round pick would be more worth it at 4 years at that contract for a second round talent would be more worth it to me than a kicker at $10 million.
And then maybe because you're paying your top 2 receivers and quarterback combined $120 million, maybe you don't need to settle for 82-yard field goals, and maybe just get close.
Well, that's right. And part of it, though, like the 4-down ways of the NFL, and like that to me it's a big part of it. Obviously, like he's been great at kickoffs, like the little things we don't talk about much. But like and by the way, Butker is at 6.4, so
that's significant. Yeah,
Todd France is doing the old. We're going to ask for a lot here, and that's fine. But I don't know what the number is. $8 million? Would that make you want a second round pick? I mean,
if anybody throws a second round pick at you, like, yeah, I'll take that.
The Raiders.
I'll take that for Brandon Aubrey. I just don't value kickers in that way because John brought it up. The top kickers in the league, maybe a couple of them we'll be talking about in 3 years from now, still being the top kickers in the league, but they burn out so fast, man. And then $10 million is just a nuts number for a kicker for a team that I'm not going to say he's a crutch, but it's almost like trading a player away on a basketball team because your coach keeps leaning on him too much. Where you're like, he didn't do anything wrong. It's just that coach loves to play him, and he won't play the young guys. And the version of Brandon Aubrey of that is, we're going into the half. We don't really need to try for 7. Let's just chill at midfield and try this 70-yard field goal over and over and over. And it's not his fault. He's too good at his job.
Yeah,
he's too damn good at his job. But the NFL owners are not going to allow kickers to start making $10 million a year and more. Like, that's just not going to happen. That's not in their plans, right? So he's going to be the highest paid kicker forever if he gets $10 million or anywhere close to $10 million.
The only problem is with the Cowboys, though, and fans will bring this up, is when you say the second round pick, they're going to bring up Tristan Hill and Kelvin Joseph and Sam Williams and just how little they've gotten out of their second round picks. I know that's gonna get brought up.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm just saying, I know I live on Twitter too much, so I just know exactly what the response will be to that. So, yeah.
Yeah, the thing with Aubrey, like, I think the long kicks and stuff is fine, but if I'm actually talking about something that impresses me most about him is how he changes the math for the opposing team in the last 2 minutes of the first half. I think that's the most interesting thing, more than any of his kicks necessarily, is teams – like, if normally you don't want to give the opposing offense 40 seconds because you feel like they can get in field goal range, for the Cowboys, that might be 15 seconds. That might be 20 seconds because you know that that's 2 plays and you're in Brandon Aubrey range. And then you just have to weigh how valuable is that necessarily to, again, a second round pick. And I think the answer is pretty clear in there.
And I don't have an example. But like your point there about Brandon Aubrey range, I don't have a clear example at the top of my head. But what's the difference in Brandon Aubrey range and then a couple other kickers, who you might be able to go find, or whatever? Granted, this team has shown they've had problems finding kickers at times too. But like to me, that Brandon Aubrey range, that is a special thing. How much is it really utilized during the year? Once, twice? Does the threat of it matters? I guess. He was not top 10 in field goal percentage last year.
And KT, well, you do, I think, have to look on that a little bit on a scale, because if you're attempting and missing 55 plus yarders, like if your percentage is down, then, there's context there to be had. But your broader point, I agree with. Like, Tyler Loop was one of the best kickers in the NFL. I mean, he's a really good kicker, but he missed like whatever, a 40-something yard field goal that would have sent the team to the playoffs. So for me, like, give me the accurate kicker over the one with the range. Maher hit like a 60-yard field goal here a couple of times. That doesn't matter. Like, you have to be consistent with your accuracy more than just range.
To be fair to Brandon, his 6 misses last year were all over 50 yards. So right. He wasn't missing any layups. I think he had 1 missed extra point there towards the end of the year. We all know he's awesome. It's just Todd France knows he's got Jerry's number right now and has for a couple years. Maybe that's what's going on.
Well, it shouldn't be. I don't want to be the one to tell Todd France anything. He's really good at his job. But the leverage that you have doing a franchise quarterback is exponentially different than a kicker.
No doubt. Let's move to just John put a good article up a couple days ago, and it's kind of honing in on the names the Cowboys might be interested in and just kind of paring it down a little bit. When we look at where this draft is, I do want to take this to last week's Christian Parker press conference as well. Christian Parker and Brian Schottenheimer, because that happened, I think, the day we recorded. So any thoughts that you want to get off your chest about that press conference, John, and where the defense is headed and what he's going to bring from an alignment and strategy standpoint as well?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway from that press conference was just how sharp he was on every question that I don't know if you can prepare for every possible question that you're going to get in that type of setting when you've never been a defensive coordinator, you've never been a head coach. And when right before the press conference started, when he sat down, he was looking at this sheet of paper that he had, like clearly going over some talking points. And when I saw that, I was like, I just know how tough that is to try and stick to these things that you're saying. Like, I'm like, is he going to be robotic? Is it going to seem natural, whatever? And once he started answering questions, I was like, oh yeah, it's easy to see how you do whatever they did, 9 Zooms with DC candidates, how he could win you over in that setting. I mean, he never seemed rattled, never seemed like there was anything that he didn't have a really good answer for. And so even to the point of, while I don't love it for our jobs, I thought he did a great job of not really showing his hand on what he thought about the defensive talent on the roster or what he would be looking for in terms of the edge rushers, in terms of the corners and things like that. Because, with the Cowboys for a long time, it was, you're going to use 12 or 20 on a corner. That dude's got to have 32-inch arms. He's got to be over 6 foot. And he wasn't really showing his hand on any of that type of stuff, which is pretty interesting because I do believe that either 12 or 20 will be spent on a corner. And then the edge rusher thing is just so different because you go to a 3-4, it just could be a little bit of a different profile than what they've had in the past from their edge rushers. And frankly, they need a lot of them. I mean, edge rusher went from being a strength of, just a couple years ago to now it's arguably their biggest weakness. And so I thought he did a great job handling all of that while also putting you in a spot where you don't know for sure what his defense will look like. I think you're doing him a disservice if you think it's just going to be, well, this is what Vic Fangio does here. Well, this is what Vance Joseph does here. And I think the way he sold them on how I'm going to do some things different, I think that probably impressed him a lot. But then also the fact of, hey, I didn't necessarily agree when Vic would do this and this, but I understand chain of command, and I understand he was the DC. And so I'm gonna follow orders, which obviously you would love to hear that as, in the front office or a head coach and things like that. And so I thought it was very, very impressive the way he handled everything, for just being honest. I know if you're online, it seems like everybody, after they hired him, is an expert on how great he is. Well, you just don't know a lot about him because he hadn't even been a DC on the college level. So it's hard to go back to tape and say, in this situation, this is what he'll do. You don't know that. And so I'm fascinated by seeing how things go going forward, and it is kind of just a fresh new start from what we've seen in the past. So maybe it's a great thing, maybe it's not, but it is definitely new, and that is interesting.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that also is I think we'll get a better answer if you're looking for an answer going into the season of what his defenses could look like or not. I think free agency in the draft, with the leeway the Cowboys give to their coordinators to acquire personnel. I think the type of personnel that they go out and get, I think Christian Parker's fingerprints will be on it. I'm not like it won't be exclusively just his things, but Brian Schottenheimer's an offensive guy. Clayton Adams is on that side and all that. And I think Jerry in general leans towards, just because a lot more big names and pop is on the offensive side, I think the defensive coordinator will be allowed to do a lot more of acquiring personnel that he wants. So I think if you, more than his press conference, if you want to see what kind of defense he's going to be running, I think we'll get an answer on what kind of players they get in free agency and then in the draft.
And I just want to real quick say this, that like they're going to obviously be a player in free agency and add some players, but you know, when they brought in Mike Nolan and Mike McCarthy, they went out and got Gerald McCoy and Don Terry Poe and some guys that, again, they didn't work out, so it's easy to laugh at those at the time. But if you go back to that time when they were adding those players, there was a lot of talk, especially on social media, of how they're moving differently, they're changing things up. So it's like, even with what they do in March, I've just been around too long to be like, still going to need to see it in September. Like that whole just they adding these pieces and stuff like that'll be great, and there's going to be changes. Frankly, there have to be. You can't be any worse of a defense than you were. But I'm going to need longer than just putting together some moves and go, this thing's totally different. This could be this year's Patriots or Seahawks where they do the 1 year completely like invest and turn everything around. Like I still am going to need to see more. Also because of the fact that let's not act like this free agency class is just like loaded with instant impact, guys that are just going to absolutely turn the defense around.
Did his answer about running a 3-4 front and then in combination with not being interested in Clowney anymore change your perception of the kind of guys they're looking for in the draft? To me, like Keldrick Falk is probably off my board now because he's just like another guy with the same kind of body that they already have. And I'm not a 3-4 genius. I'm not Vic Fangio, but did it change your perception on the guys they're looking for in free agency and in the draft?
Yeah, no question about it. Certainly it seems like you're going to want just a little bit of a different edge rusher profile than what you've had in the past. Obviously, Micah Parsons is going to work out in any system, so guys like that. But I think the one that stood out to me, and I'm not some scheme guru either, but it made me think of I don't know how a young DeMarcus Lawrence fits in that, Actually, you know what? Probably young DeMarcus Lawrence is probably fine, but maybe an older DeMarcus Lawrence, I don't know how much that would fit in. And then also might just be the age thing, too, where Christian Parker's like, yeah, man, this guy's almost the same age as me and J.W. and Clowney. Like, we want to get young on the defense. We want to, change things around and build in a different way up front. And so, yeah, no, to answer your question, though, yeah, it absolutely did change the way I thought of a lot of that stuff.
Yesterday, I put together just a small list of Cowboys free agent names that would please the fan base. That's all it was for, just for headline stature alone. And I was looking at Joey Bosa, Von Miller, Cam Jordan, all these old guys. You get the feeling just with everything happening, including the age of the coaching staff, probably not going to be going that way too much if they don't have to. Unless Von Miller wanted to come play for $4 million, that'd be fun. I was thinking about that and the changes. I mean, I thought he was careful about a lot of things in his press conference. It's interesting about not giving up, what the alignment's going to be because they're going to play a bunch of different alignments. They're going to be in 4-2-5 a lot as well. But the other thing, just are you going to be on the sideline or up in the booth? What if it seems like such a generic topic over the years, but from a play calling standpoint, we don't know because he doesn't know. And I know they'll figure that out, but until you've done that a lot, I guess in your head, but go back to all of his coaching jobs. Dude, I follow the Packers. I don't know if he was a coach who was up in the booth in Green Bay or if he was on the sideline. So it is very important to keep remembering we don't know that much about this guy. I know Shoddy wants to tell us, though, to ask him about his shoes. So there's that. I would recommend you can go to Dick's Going Gone and get a real nice discount on some Jordans.
The booth and sideline thing only matters whenever you suck.
Yeah, right.
Let's be real.
So my biggest takeaway on that was, and this just might be from critical media standpoint, but whatever you choose, stick with that all season. Because as soon as you change to the other thing, it's going to be judged as a panic move. And I know it's not considered a big deal, but when they did the whole end of the season, no, this is what we're going to do. Eberflus is going in the box. Like, who sat there and was like, they're turning this around. This will mark that date down. This is when it got turned around. And now I know he's young, and so there could be some changes, but I'm just saying when that happens, know that you're coming with a lot of scrutiny because you're not doing this in a college. You're doing this for the Dallas Cowboys. And so I'm sure he's very aware of that too, that what it will look like. Because I keep going back to how stunning it was. And I'm glad that Brian was open about it, but just how he would be talking about how much extra time he was spending in the defensive meeting rooms, where it's like, yeah, if that's Mike McCarthy, you can understand a little bit. Hey, he's been head coach for a long time. He can, just as your first year head coach, first time ever being a head coach. Oh, by the way, he's also calling the offensive plays. Now he's got to spend extra time in the defensive meeting rooms. Like, just the optics of all those things are so bad that it's like, whatever you decide to do, just decide it because that's what you're going to do all season long. And if you want to reevaluate it in the offseason, that's fine. But that you can't be switching up and be like, yeah, you know what, we're going to be up in the booth this week, and maybe next week we'll be back in the sideline. Like, I just don't think of any like well-run ships in the NFL that do things like that. And so, again, I'm sure he's very aware of that as well.
Yeah, and also I think that's where there's some value to preseason. I know we talk about it with players and stuff. Like, that's not. I don't know how much the player on the field aspect adds, but I remember because I was on the day-to-day beat when McCarthy took over play calling from Kellen Moore. And that was something McCarthy talked about very candidly about how valuable the preseason can be. So, like, I don't know how obviously they're going to do it, but if they do, like, one game in the preseason you're in the box, one game you're on the sideline, like, feel it out, test it out. That's where the operational side of a team, more so than evaluating players, is where there's more value in preseason. I think they'll figure that out.
Oh, and by the way, there's no way you do these extensive Zoom interviews and then you do an in-person interview and you don't have a definitive answer on what you're going to do there. So he can say that publicly. There is zero chance that I believe that he didn't tell Brian Schottenheimer exactly what he thinks, and Brian didn't like whatever he said on that. I find it very hard to believe that they're like, yeah, we're just going to test some things out or whatever. Let's be honest, this is a big moment for Christian Parker. This is a huge hire for Brian Schottenheimer. He can't just be going every year new DC because, swung and miss again. We'll try this again next year. I mean, at some point, you're the head coach. It starts reflecting on you as well. So, and just the way that the whole interview process was handled, it's clearly that Brian was running point on this. So I just find it hard to believe that it was like, I don't know, let's just figure this out as we go. I highly doubt that.
Yeah, if they did 40 Zooms this year, how many did they do last year for Eberflus? I mean,
not even one. They just said, you remember. Yeah, you remember where you lived when you were here last time. Yeah,
I've never thought harder because of how bad it got last year. I've never thought more and at length and harder about how players learn. Like, they just have a group of guys that weren't all learning together because some guys might learn visually, seeing on the board. Some guys just got to go do it on the field a few times. And I was thinking about that so much because there was such a disconnect on defense, especially on the back end. It's like maybe we just need to have like 7 guys in the secondary together who all kind of learn the same way. Because that was a very interesting human experiment, just watching that defense last year and asking yourself questions. Again, we're blowing that coverage again. Okay, I couldn't cover it myself, but I don't know, very strange.
It's like a classroom
that's a good
full of
that's a good point,
kids.
though.
Yeah, right.
No, for sure. But Stephen Jones brought that up the other day about how, sometimes you got all these younger guys in the NFL, and maybe it's best not to have older coaches. Maybe it's best to have younger guys that they can relate to, teaching them in a way that fits them a little bit better. A lot of these assistant coaches coming from the college game know a lot of these guys through recruiting them and things like that. Maybe that is a case when, let's be honest, they hadn't been doing that in the past. I mean, you go all the way back to, Monty Kiffin, to Rod Marinelli, to Mike Nolan. Dan Quinn, I thought, related pretty well to the younger generation. And obviously that worked out well for them. So maybe that is a factor. I just thought that the Mike Zimmer, Matt Eberflus thing probably, I don't want to say full Bobby Knight where it's completely outdated, but maybe it tiptoed in that direction.
Yeah. Okay, Saad's got to run here. Saad, before we let you go, we'll let you have your closing thoughts. And also a quick mock draft. Who we taking at 12 and 20? Saad, on the spot now.
Well, I think, just closing thoughts. I think, to me, the situation they're in is just, it's got to be defense all around. And just being here at the Combine, hearing Steven talk, it's clear that that's not something where it's, there was that draft a few years ago where I think they went like all defense almost all the way or something. it looks like it's going to be pretty close to that. And then to be honest, KT, like on the draft front, like I'm still trying to figure out just what kind of players are going to be in that area and what kind of positions they're going to be on. Instead of giving you names, like there's names that I've seen, obviously, that Dane has put out, Jon has put out in his mock drafts. For me, it's more about the types, and I think you have to get one player in the secondary. If Caleb Downs by any chance makes it to 12, I think but I don't think that that's going to happen. But that's the one guy. But then other than that, I think you can't dismiss looking at a player who might not necessarily be in a role that you like coming out of college, but that you can mold into something different. Because I think a lot about the Micah Parsons pick. When Micah Parsons was picked as a big consolation prize, Micah was not somebody the Cowboys wanted. They wanted Patrick Surtain. They wanted J.C. Horn. Both of those guys were gone. They traded back, and they settled for Micah Parsons. But then DeMarcus Lawrence got hurt that year. They converted Micah to what he became, and that's where the success happened. So I think with Christian Parker, a new defensive coordinator, I'd love for them to kind of see which players and skill sets they can mold into something they want, not necessarily just plug and play to what they were doing in college.
No, I agree. I think it's a very good point. Everyone go follow Saad. Check out his work on The Athletic as well. Also does a little work over at Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket, too. Saad Youssef, everybody. Have a good combine, Saad. All right. Jon.
It's just us now, Jon.
Just us now. Say what you got to say about Saad.
Say real shit.
I'm going to criticize him for those halftime Super Bowl rankings.
Okay.
Still holding on to him.
It was a pretty good fight we had a couple weeks ago. Let's move on to something. And I think if you're watching on the YouTube side of things via the Haymaker Network, we've got a little visual element to this portion of the show as well. Jon, I don't know if you did this, but Mike Marshall is pretty smart. And he did a research project that is really awesome. And he just sent it to me via text the other day. And I was like, aren't you going to do something with this and publish it? But it's looking at the last 20 years of Cowboys drafts. And we're just going to cap this off at rounds 1 through 3. We all know that day 3, things get weird sometimes. Some guys hit, some guys don't. But we have the first 3 rounds. And he's just done a big research project. And I thought it'd be fun to walk through a few things specifically at the positions that we've been talking about. Looking at the 20-year overview, I think obviously we're going to talk about the RAS score a lot, the relative athletic score. That's going to be a big thing moving forward. The Cowboys have an average relative athletic score. They drafted 8.24. So that's something to watch for. But
that's with Tyler Booker in there, who had a really, really crappy RAS score.
He had a 3, yeah.
Yeah, he was the outlier, and with Travis Frederick in there.
Yeah.
So you think every other player has to pull that up, right? And this is 20 years worth of data, so this is their type at each position, right? And when Christian Parker gets in here and he's, the keys are thrown his way, I think probably down the board they're gonna say, hey, pick a guy you want. It doesn't have to fit our profiles here. But this is 2 decades worth of data of 1 through 3 round picks of what is their type at each position. So it's pretty telling to me. And, the big headline is they are RAS score. That's their kink.
Yeah.
That's what they're into, man. They love a RAS score freak. It doesn't have to be big school. It can be small school. If you go position by position, they really love taking their offensive linemen early. Arm length is kind of like the minimum threshold for them on this. 34-inch. There have been some dudes that are 32 and a 8. But this is kind of like heavy on numbers and stuff. But what it can help you do as someone that's a Cowboys fan or hosting a show or writing about the team, you can go, okay, well, I don't know if there's any shorties this year on the, offensive line, but Will Campbell last year.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think they ever would have taken Will Campbell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can just rule that guy out on the probability. Then you get down to linebacker and edge rushers, right? They like him really, really stinking fast. It's Micah, it's DeMarcus, it's, they have, this isn't perfect because some of this is done with AI, but Leighton Vander Esch is in here. He's obviously not an edge rusher, but an internal inside linebacker. 9.98 RAS score.
Yeah.
They're always going to lean RAS score in size on positions or on early picks.
And this goes back to, I think, Christian Parker, at least. I mean, we're all predicting 12 and 20 will be defensive picks. Obviously, something crazy could happen. The board might even tell you to take an offensive player at 12 and 20. And obviously, they could make trades. But, like, what Christian Parker wants might be different than what Will McClay has wanted since 2012, 2013, whenever he took over the draft room. I don't know about all of this. How much of that you've followed over the years, John? Because you do start paring this down, but I do think this is very helpful with Combine Week upon us to sit there and go, yeah, they like their edge rushers that do this, and that's where the Christian Parker thing is now a fun puzzle we're going to have to put together this year.
Yeah, no question about that. I will say the first one that jumped out to me, the school. And the bigger schools, and one of the things that factors in now more so than ever before is that a lot of the smaller, mid-major type players are now going to the bigger school because of NIL, and they're able to transfer. And so you take a lot of that away. With that being said, Christian Parker, obviously in Philadelphia, they take Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo, and he's been outstanding for them. And that's one of the key players people talk about when they talk about Christian Parker. So it's not like you can completely eliminate it. The one other factor I'll throw in too is that the familiarity with the coaching staff with certain players, like knowing the background. Because I will always say that, when they did the Quinnen Williams trade, people were critical of it, looked at it as an overpay to the Jets and that. I don't think that they do that without having Aaron Whitecotton in the building who had been around Quinnen Williams, who was like, no, this is more than just a player. Like, this is the type of guy you want behind the scenes too. I know there's a lot of dysfunction with the Jets right now, but this guy is not part of that. If you can get that guy, go get him. And I think that matters a lot as well. So, knowing a player like, for example, Christian Parker has, a little bit of background working with Mike Elko. At A&M, so maybe like a Cassius Howell, a guy that has had a formal interview today that just came out, which, by the way, I also want to say that you're going to see a lot of stuff over the next few days about formal interviews and informal interviews. I'm just throwing out there right now, I don't know if these players know for sure the difference. So there's only like 40, 45 of them, and I've already got, we've only on the first day of players being available, there's already like 10, 15 guys that said they've had a formal with the Cowboys. Now, that could be the case, and maybe they're using all 40, 45 just on defense. That would be fascinating because of your point, KT, that there could be a point where one of those offensive tackles to them is a better value because they're like, this is our sixth guy on our board. Like, we did not think he'd be here at probably not 12, but maybe 20, and you didn't bring him in. There was no formal. This is a guy that you thought was your sixth guy on the board. And so that's why I just caution people when this stuff is coming out that I don't know that all these guys know for certain if it was a formal or informal. But up to this point, all of the guys that you can think of, the Reuben Baines, the Sonny Styles, the Arvell Reeses, they're all saying that they've had these formals with the Cowboys, which is great. You want them to be interviewing these top defensive guys. But I wonder, too, the connection piece behind it, like I said, with the Cassius Howell and how that factors in, because a lot of this research that Mike has right here, I think, is all great for the Will McClay side of it. And I think that's, if he had only say, it's just, hey, we're not even talking to the coaches, Will, who do you want? I think it absolutely fits into here. I just wonder how much on the defensive side they're going to give Christian Parker maybe a little more say than maybe they did some other guys because he's a younger guy and maybe he's doing things a little differently. I just don't know that yet. And I don't know that they know that yet because this is the first time this weekend or this whole week where a lot of the scouts and this new coaching staff are going to be around each other. But all of this information is great because it shows you the type of stuff that this is what Will McClay likes. I mean, the data here speaks for itself.
Yeah, scroll to the bottom down there, KT, and that's like the overall. There's a universal Cowboys draft formula, right? And that stuff's pretty interesting to me of what Will McClay's looking for. But you're right, there's another defensive back from Toledo that could be around 20 this year, right? And the Cowboys, in their history, haven't taken small school guys unless they were the best athlete at their position. That's just not what they roll with, right?
Yeah.
They don't go small school dipping in the first 3 rounds unless that is the best athlete by far. Now, NIL is going to make that really confusing coming up because it's going to get to separate between what you came in as the school and then what you exited as.
Yeah, New Mexico State guys end up at Texas Tech now.
Exactly. And so, but if you're Jon and you know, okay, they're going to go 3-4, we're probably going defense first 2 rounds. They're not going to take a small guy, as much as someone might fall in love with, Pons or Rivers, the cornerbacks, they're too small. The Cowboys don't take small dudes early. But you've also, when I worked there, one of my lasting memories of working there was them calling Rod Marinelli into the room on draft night when they're on the clock and them going, this guy or this guy, and Rod Marinelli saying Tristan Hill, right? Mm-hmm. And giving the coordinator or the position coach the option. I think that's accurate that Christian Parker is going to be in on the decision. They're not just going to go above his head unless they just kind of like sun him a little bit and go, hey, you got enough to worry about. Let us handle the draft for you. But I think what they would do is narrow down the field for him and say, hey, 20th pick, Christian Parker, come in here. Come sit next to the kids and Charlotte and everybody for a second. And Greg Abbott if he's in there. 20th pick. We got Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Mm-hmm. We got Dylan Thieneman. And we got Cassius Howell. Who are you feeling? And just let him run with that. But he is going to get influenced by the guys he knows. Mike Elko, right? Cassius Howell's a dude for him. He's gonna talk to Mike Elko, and Mike Elko is going to sell him.
Cassius Howell is the player profile edge rusher to me that I think makes sense if they're going to do on defense what we think they're going to do on defense. I could also see him mentioning one of those safeties and seeing Steven go, oh, no.
Yeah.
Because they just haven't done that over the years.
I like the idea of them turning to Christian Parker on not just the draft, but even in free agency and being like, what would Howie Roseman do in this situation? He seems like he's got this down pretty well. What would he do?
Yeah, exactly. That's a good test. Just have them in there and be like, and Howie would handle this. How do you
and then
think?
He would say that he didn't know, just like he didn't watch NFC East Hard Knocks. I don't know, man.
I'm not sure.
I think this is a great stuff. You also put some red flags, I think, to watch too. Any harass score below 8. Mm-hmm. We have Travis Frederick, Tyler Booker as exceptions there. Mm-hmm. That was need picks as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, although Travis Frederick, it was a need, but less so than I think Tyler Booker's like, we need a little help on the offensive line a little bit here. Mm-hmm.
Hey, one other thing I want to mention real quick, because I know that this is a guy that you're interested in, KT, but also when it comes down to some of these numbers and because of NIL and guys playing, these super seniors playing longer, with a guy like Hakeem Mesidor from Miami about to turn 25, how does that impact you? And that's just not just the Cowboys thing. He's clearly a first-round talent. But if you use a first-round pick on a guy, you're hoping for not just 4 good years. You're hoping for a second contract. And if that second contract starts for an edge rusher who could be turning 29, 30, I'm not saying that you completely remove him off your board, but it will be fascinating to see the way that they value something like that. Because I could see some teams being like, love him, no way in the first round.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, his red flags are his age, foot injuries, and then I will go back and keep reiterating this. There is no cure for narcolepsy. So when he did an interview saying that he had it, I just want to know, man. I just want to know, do you have the cure? If you do, hand it over. I would like that.
There's another angle to that too, and it's something that I think the fantasy football community is ahead of that the NFL is not quite up to, and it's teammate score. Getting to play on the other side of Ruben Bain in the ACC.
That's a good point.
What do you
No.
what do you weigh that? If you don't weigh it, I think you're doing your job wrong.
No doubt.
And so
Carnell Tate at Ohio State.
Exactly.
It helps when Jermaine Smith's out there.
Yeah.
Kent Garrison here in the next room. Big fan.
Long-time caller.
Big fan, Mike, of the Father John Misty social media posts.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, though, after you did this, have the Cowboys had the most success when they follow these parameters, like when they follow their guide or when they break away from it?
Good question.
It's so the top line on it's not on this page, but it's on the blurb above. 85% of successful Cowboys draft picks scored 8+ on relative athletic score. They've never taken an undersized player in 20 years in the first 3 rounds. So it does work. It is a good formula because it works in mass across the board. And it's kind of like I don't know. It's narrowing down. Don't sign the running back coming off 300 carries. It just creates these like bumper lanes for yourself to play within. And that's all GMs are really trying to do.
Yeah.
They're trying to make the next best decision, which is don't give me the whole pool of players. Don't give me the entire universe of how this works. Narrow it down for me. I don't want a guy coming off an ACL, right? I'm not going to sign that guy. I'm not going to draft a dude that's small for his position. I'm not going to draft a slow guy. Travis Frederick is the absolute outlier because he was one of the best at his position. Slow, not particularly great tape, like just someone that they thought could learn the position and had enough athleticism. But to answer your question on the whole, this has worked really, really stinking well, at least in the first 3 rounds. It might fall apart later because, you do start letting coaches come in there and pick your positions, and you're literally just hunting traits after the 3rd round. You're just trying to find a pass rusher that has a little bit of bend to him or a corner that maybe can cover, in zone, but can't tackle worth a lick, right? Those guys are going to have a problem. They're going to have warts. And so for the first 3 rounds, like maybe every GM does this. I don't know. I haven't done every team, but this is what they do. This is what they stick to, and it has worked.
Yeah. No, this is all great. And if you're just listening to the audio portion of the podcast, if you go check it out on YouTube at the Haymaker Network, you can see the visuals and things because Mike just made a whole doc out of this. He should be charging for this, honestly.
You need to print it out and send it to the Star in a minute. They could use this information, I think.
FedEx that thing over. So thank you, Machine, for your research project for us. I also, before we get out of here, John, you're in Indianapolis. I've been there one time for the Combine, 2016. We had Zeke that year. It was pretty good. Jalen Smith was walking around with a brace. There's a lot of weird stuff going on that year. John, when you look at all the underrated American cities, where does Indianapolis stand? Because I don't think a lot of people are pointing that out as a vacation destination.
No, I mean, I'm a huge college basketball fan, so I've been here for the last 3 or 4 Final Fours. They're in the regular rotation. So between that and the Combine, this has probably been top 5 or 6 city in terms of how much time I've spent in the city. Obviously Oxnard is up there, and Warren, Michigan, Plano, Texas. But no, I don't know. I've been here like 12, 13 Combines. So if it was in June, I think it would be a lot better. I hate cold weather, and we're coming here in February, so that would be my only knock on it. But in terms of like walkability and everything being where it needs to be, I think it's great. Especially I didn't go to the Super Bowl this year, but just especially this week, being around a lot of people that were there and hearing the complaints of how, just to give people an example, if you watch the Super Bowl, there's some times where they would cut to commercial and they would be showing like the Golden Gate Bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge is probably an hour and a half ride from that Levi's Stadium, and so there's just a lot of stuff that was spread out there. Obviously, people that live in the Dallas area, if you were around when they had the Super Bowl there's a lot of stuff where it was in downtown Dallas, but then there's a lot of obviously the games out in Arlington, and clearly there wasn't as much stuff built up in Arlington at that time as there is now, and so Houston was like that for the Super Bowl, whereas like Indy is like in a way like New Orleans, where that's why they're always in those rotations for the Final Four. I mean, the Final Four, is in April, so it's a little bit warmer, but everything is extremely walkable, and there's just so many options from hotel to restaurants and things like that. And for what I'm doing here, like that's great because you want to be able to run into people on the street, even if you can't get them for a long period of time, just to kind of let them know, your face if they're new to the organization, just to say hi to them and stuff like that. You're not going to get that in LA, which is what has been put up as if it's not here, then that's where they want to move it to. And so they would be doing a lot of stuff at SoFi. And if anybody that's been to California knows, like SoFi is not going to be close to where they're probably going to have team personnel staying and owners that are worth billions of dollars. They're going to be staying somewhere by the ocean, and that's not going to be anywhere where we're going to be able to really get to. And so I will say, even people like myself who don't love the cold, we will re-up and sign up for Indy every single year just because and then the other thing is you get used to it because you're here all the time. So you're just like, nah, the Cowboys wouldn't, their personnel wouldn't go to this place or this place. So if they're not here right now, they got to be at this place, or this place. And I know a lot of people say, well, just follow the bus. That's not always the case. They're a little bit savvy with that stuff. Yeah. But it is fun. I enjoy it. And then you see a lot of people you haven't seen, all season long. But the weather is the only knock on it. Everything else I think about is great.
You don't think Jerry's going to try and drag that thing to Frisco at some point?
Yeah. No, that's possible. I always wonder about with how much land that Jerry owns, up the tollway, going even, past Frisco. I've always wondered I just think that the next Cowboy Stadium will be that way, but I don't think it'll be in Jerry's lifetime. But I've always felt like the next, wherever the Cowboys' next home is, it's probably out that way. I don't think they'll go to Oklahoma like the Bears go in Indiana, but I do think that it'll be something like that. And so if it's closer, I guess, to the Star, you could possibly do something like that. I just think everything's so spread out right now. That's what happened when the draft was in Dallas. It was obviously the draft is at the stadium, but I'm not going there. The whole team is at the Star still,
I think that was the plan when they built the Star. They had the Combine in mind, especially having the hospital right there and having the hotel, all that connected with the restaurants and everything. So you could keep the Combine kind of central there at the Star.
They do have everything. You are right, yes.
And the medical thing is a big thing. The way they have it set up
100%.
the Combine with they've got the system down. They get all the reports. They've got it all down. I think that the Cowboys just like going up there to Indy. So they're not trying to push for it. They know they could have it in Frisco, but they enjoy the trip. And like you said, John, everyone knows what to expect. You see people you haven't seen in a while. You go to the restaurants you like, and everybody knows and everybody enjoys it. So why mess that up,
The only thing I'll say so when they do a lot of the workout stuff with the players at the stadium, teams all have their own suite. And there are suites at the Ford Center, so don't get me wrong, but I just always feel like wherever it gets moved to, it's going to incorporate that team's home stadium. Mm-hmm. So if they get rid of that and they're like, hey, we're not going to have fans come in, we'll just set up teams where they can have different parts of the stands at the Ford Center, then I think then you got something for sure. I'm always skeptical if it doesn't involve the fans, because I can just say, like I was just talking to Dave Hellman a little while ago, and we were talking about, and Kent, you'll remember this, how we used to be set up. Media was inside of Lucas Oil, and they moved that out because they're like, no, we want fans to come and watch these workouts. Yeah. I'm telling you, nothing against it, but they're not super exciting the way the workouts are. There's not like a great vibe inside the stadium, and a lot of guys, obviously, like the top quarterbacks, don't even throw there. They save it for their pro day, and so it's fine if you live in Indy. Definitely, I would say come to it, but I don't know that it's the type of thing where you're like, oh, I got to go to that one year and fly in and spend a week there. I don't know that would be the best thing, but it could be. It could come to Dallas one year. I guess that wouldn't be a surprise.
You got the right mindset though. Pick an event, pick the Final Four, a concert, a basketball game you want to go see, and go up there with some bros on the weekend. Great city for that. You're inside most of the time. Great steakhouses. Can walk everywhere. Very underrated when it comes to just a weekend getaway type of city.
Do they play music during the workouts?
Not really. They usually have someone announcing, like, whatever the time is that the guys just ran. And there's, like, talking in between, talking to, like, interviewing people and, like, fans and stuff in the stands and stuff like that. But as what I remember from the last few years, I'm pretty sure that what's on is, like, the NFL Network broadcast is, like, on the big screen. Yeah. And then that's kind of what it is. But there probably is a little bit of music. I probably wasn't paying attention that much. But it was more of like I felt like I was on set of the NFL Network in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been to a handful of pro days, and like it still kind of feels like football because, they're playing, I went to like Manziel's, right? And he's like blasting whatever music he wants to play. And then you go to the Texas one and they're still doing their thing. And it still feels like a football practice. This feels like you're in like a lab and they're putting the little ear tags in the cattle, and no one's having a real good time.
Yeah. So you saying that pro day thing, I've only been to a few, and I wish I would have went to that Manziel one, because that Manziel pro day to me is a little bit like the Michael Jackson halftime show of that Super Bowl in '92, where it like changed the game for that.
Yeah.
You know, like everything that they did there with the music and that. I think George Bush might have been there. Like there was just there was a lot going on at that pro day.
Yeah.
And I just remember that was like must see TV. And there's been other good pro days since then, but nothing like that's been like the gold standard for pro days.
Yeah, I went the next year when it was just like Christian Kirk and someone else.
Oh,
and it
yeah,
just wasn't the same vibe. But Texas, Texas puts on a good pro day. Like you have some fun at the Texas one. They kind of let you walk wherever. You're like, oh shit, I'm in the middle of a drill. Sorry, and you got to move out of the way. But it's a good time. They've turned it into like a commodity for fan viewing. So it's a good time. I love a good pro day. It's fun, man.
I know at the North
I'd
Texas.
love to see you jump in on a couple reps there, and they're like, wait, who is
just
that
push the
guy?
sled about 5 yards.
He can hold his own. Machine can hold his own.
Be better than some of them.
At the North Texas Pro Day, they have the 2 o'clock lab band come out and just play some jazz standards. It's very interesting.
They just bring pictures from Rick Brock and just set them next to the guy.
There you go.
Get used to this.
All right. Well, Jon, thank you for your time today, live from Indianapolis at the Combine. We appreciate it. Everyone go follow Jon's work at The Athletic as well. He'll be there all week doing awesome stuff, and we'll catch up next week because Jon will be one of the few media members on the Jerry bus for the annual Jerry interview, assuming it happens, but it usually does. So we'll look forward to that in next week's episode. Thank you very much, Jon. Thank you very much, Kent Garrison, backstage again. Kent made me an iPod. Just show it to the camera. He made that. Bare hands. He made it from scratch.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So thank you very much, Kent. And follow the Mad About Movies podcast. We have Machine here from D Magazine.
It's me.
Go check out the Strong Side podcast with Mike and Mike Palucci. All right, a better version of Mike and Mike in my mind.
Oh, thank you.
You know, just
appreciate that.
Growing up listening to you guys.
Our bank accounts say that as well. So
Yes.
And
then I'm Kevin. 3 to 6 p.m. every day on 97.1 The Eagle. And other things. Oh, SNL's back this week, so follow the After Party podcast.
All right.
I always forget to promote the things. Also, thank you to the Haymaker Network for having us inside this beautiful, luxurious studio. Mm-hmm. For Jon, for Saad, for Kent, for the Machine, I'm Kevin. We'll see you next week on the One Star Cowboys podcast. Goodbye.
The One Star Cowboys podcast. The One Star Cowboys podcast. The One Star Cowboys podcast. Presented by Haymaker. Presented by Haymaker. Presented by Haymaker.